Hi, Lucy.
Hey Dom, are you okay?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad. Oh, I like your background.
This is my fake Zoom background.
That is very cool. I was
Apparently
thinking,
it's an apartment in the Barbican.
oh, very
It's
nice.
very posh. Everybody loves the furniture behind me.
I like the windows. It
Yeah,
looks like you've got a
I'm
balcony.
actually in my daughter's pink bedroom. So
I, I'm in my office, come laundry room, come spare bedroom.
yeah, it's nice. So have you been working from home for long then? Have you?
Yeah, since lockdown, so it's been tricky, but hey,
Yeah,
are you all right?
I'm good. Yeah, good, good, good. Just bear with me. I'm just going to grab up the presentation for today, and then
No worries.
yeah. So. So how many staff have you got, Lucy, at the moment? How many of you are
Um,
working from home?
there's there's six of us in total.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matt, Rosie. I need to literally like name them. Matt, Rosie. Yes. There's five of us, and then we've got our finance officer who's part time. So there's
Yes.
five of us in total, and everyone's furloughed apart from me. And I've brought two of them back part time. So
Okay, so you're starting to bring, right, yeah.
starting to gradually.
Okay.
Just all going to get a little bit scary, I think, after October time when there's no more money left.
Well, that's exactly. So we'll talk about that today, because that's a big. We're expecting a spike in redundancies and across the whole economy. But I'll give you a view of what our
Yeah.
opinion is of that. And so yeah, so let me just get started. Okay. Great. Okay, so let's kick off. So Lucy, thanks for joining us this week. Appreciate it. So as always, we record the session, so please do not swear.
Okay, I'll try.
I'll cut it out. Don't worry, I'll cut it out. I'll edit it in the post edit if you really get passionate about something and you can, don't worry. So feel free. What we're going to do, the usual format is we'll spend 10-20 minutes talking about the job market, what's happening out there. That's obviously what we do as a company, track the job market and help people access the latest career advice. So hopefully anybody who joins today will be from a city background, policy, understand skills, really want to know and what's happening in the job market. And also the other thing, so it's not just boring and me talking, is to hear from you and introduce or talk about yourself, talk about the company, talk about the charity, and also just tell us about skills and talent and particularly let's talk about what happens post furlough, right? And
Yeah.
what are we all what's the likely from this, probably not beyond this year, can't think too beyond, but is there
Yeah.
anything fundamental changes in the business, and how are you thinking about skills and talent and people? And yeah, be great to get your view on that. It'd be great.
Okay.
So just for the benefit, obviously I know you. It'd be great if you could just introduce yourself to the audience, and then just tell us a bit about yourself, and if you could introduce CoCo, and then I'll go into the labour market side. Is that okay, Lucy?
Yeah, of course. So thanks very much for having me, Dom. So I'm Lucy Kendall. I'm Chief Exec of CoCo. We're an international children's charity and we work in East Africa. We primarily build secondary schools for children in areas where they wouldn't be able to access schooling, and we work with parents and caregivers to help them kickstart small businesses with small loans. And we also do quite a lot of work in sustainable agriculture because about 90% of parents are farmers, so we help them make more money from that rather than just subsistence farming. And we're based in Newcastle upon Tyne, and it would have been our 20th anniversary this year, so we had lots of things planned. So that's kind of been put on hold until next year, and hopefully we'll be able to celebrate a bit more then when things get back to whatever the new normal.
20 years. And how long have you been at the charity for, Lucy?
17 years.
17
So
of the 20.
quite a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned there you're all working from home, so it'd be great to know more about the charity and the work that the great work that you've been doing over those 17 years. I'm sure you can try to condense that into 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Probably talk about the future as well. Where you're heading. What does the charity sector look like? What are you hearing from other people in other charities? I'm sure you're speaking to other people outside of CoCo as well. So we'll get onto that in a second. That'd be great. So I'll start with the labour market data for now, and then hopefully we can debate that together as well. So give me a second. I'll just share the screen. So it's not death by PowerPoint. I'll just go through a couple of slides
Okay.
from our sort of latest labour market report. So this is a weekly view of new job demand. So as a company, we track every single job in the UK, and we look at what jobs are increasing, what's declining, and looking at across sectors as well. So in terms of job volume, we had pre-pandemic, pre-lockdown on the middle of March, towards the third week of March, we were getting around 300,000 per week jobs. That's gone down 2/3. It hit the low point really in April. We saw a bit of a strange spike at the end of April, and then it was starting to slowly recover. But what you can see from this graph, we're not seeing a V-shaped recovery in the economy, and obviously this is important for every sector, not just engineering, manufacturing, and this growth isn't evenly distributed either. So not every sector is recovering as fast as others. So what we're predicting is a slow and steady recovery towards the end of 2021. So if you're thinking about planning, we've already heard from government today, some sort of press briefings around trying to encourage people back to work, particularly for the city centre economy. We're expecting the largest reduction is accommodation and food service. The good thing is we've seen construction, engineering, digital has remained really strong. Anywhere where you can work from home, we've done pretty well in terms of those economies. The bit that a bit of sort of pandemic have benefited from is health and social care has increased. Education has increased. It dipped off obviously in August, but we're not predicting a V-shaped recovery, and I think we've seen that from the Bank of England as well, the reports that they've put out. So obviously blue, slow and steady recovery. If we look into the sectors. So we've seen a real bounce over the last. This was to the end of July. This data was from. So we saw a bounce in accommodation and food service and construction. So construction's come back really strong, which is good. Transportation and storage and logistics is coming back strong. The stuff that's not doing so well is really, and this is historically not just last week, but arts and entertainment, recreation. So if I'm in tourism, if I'm in hotels, if I'm in more the broader, the arts and the creative sectors, I'm struggling at the moment. That demand is not coming back compared to the rest of the economy. So overall, we've seen some sectors that anything above nearly 10% growth in job demands, 10% up over the last 13 weeks on average. But we're seeing the good thing is some of these sort of lower level roles, about administration and support roles, are starting to, there's some demand being created there, but we are seeing, not the real demand. 2/3 of the job market being declined really. So I think if I'm in back of house, if I'm in hospitality, probably less front of house staff needed these days. It's more about chefs and kitchens keeping open and home delivery. Retail footfall's down 60%. We're talking about maybe 40% footfall come back into city centres. So in terms of growth, we're looking at the how can we support people to move from low growth sectors into high growth sectors, at least for the next year. So if I'm in a low growth sector such as arts and entertainment, can I move into education? Can I move into health? Can I move into social care? Can I maybe find a part-time teaching or behaviour support assistant type role? If I'm in manufacturing, now manufacturing is coming back, but how do we help people move from manufacturing and logistics into higher level engineering roles and higher level manufacturing? how can I help? We're calling it Build Back Better. So, for example, if I'm in construction, it's those green jobs. It's moving out of maybe oil and gas into the new energy, clean energy sort of sectors. So that's a picture of the job market. So we're expecting, again, I'll come out of this graph now and just come back to the webinar chat. So as you can see from the job market, it's not a V-shaped recovery. It's probably going to take 12 months, end of 2021. So people need to be planning around that. People need to be planning probably for half of the workforce in offices not to go back for at least the middle of the year. I know the government just put something out now trying to encourage workers back, but the reality is, until people feel safe, until businesses feel safe, I think people are going to get used to this, working from home as well. So that's really a short, sharp view of what the current labour market up to a couple of weeks ago. So is that, from your point of view, Lucy, is that surprising, what you expected?
No, I think that correlates with a lot of what we've been told and what we've been seeing. I mean, obviously we are a charity, but we work with a lot of businesses as well in the Northeast. So we would normally do our annual golf day up at Slaley Hall, and I went up there the other day to speak to those guys, and also to have a bit of a break to try and support them and support me, because I needed a bit of a time out. And I was talking to their general manager, and obviously they're really busy. You know, they've got, people can't go on holiday at the moment, so they're wanting to stay in local places. So suddenly the sort of hospitality industry on that side has needed loads and loads more staff, and a lot of the time you can get sort of casual staff to fill those gaps, but then there's a lot of uncertainty about how long hotels are going to be allowed to be open for, if there's a second peak and all that sort of stuff. So it is a very uncertain time to be kind of projecting where the growth's going to, whether it's going to be maintained, because I know that a lot of places are at like 98% capacity, and for a hotel that's incredible, and that would normally be like Christmas or New Year or something.
It is, yeah.
But then how can they maintain that and not bringing in too many staff, but if there's suddenly a fall, and kind of looking after those staff as well, and not just kind of, because every member of staff has a mortgage to pay and a family to feed and bills to pay. So knowing how much work they're going to get is, I think, going to be difficult for all sectors.
It will, and if people haven't got certainty, so I think that you're right, there's a lot of agency work, there's a lot of temporary staff, temporary contracts out there at the moment that we're tracking, which is good to get people into work, but it doesn't allow people then to spend and forecast and plan. And it means that people haven't got disposable income. So people are probably holding on to cash. I know the Eat Out to Help Out scheme has obviously had pros and cons. You know, it took business away from other areas of the week, but pushed. You know, people are eating more, I suppose.
Yeah.
Ordering more, pushing more focus on the service staff. And putting more pressure on the kitchens and things, which I think it's about, how do we maintain that? What does that look like in the next 3 months? What does that look like from now to Christmas? Yeah. And obviously the holiday, everybody's been trying to take a holiday, as you're saying, having a little bit of a break, even if it's all people. We have seen lots of companies enforcing people have had to have 70% of their holidays before the end of September, or end of August, sorry. So that's a lot of holiday to take in a short period of time when people haven't really taken anything. So people are taking a few weeks off. I don't know, has that been affected you at all? Have you had, in terms of holidays and travel? And
yeah, well, I spoke to our team. So we, when lockdown occurred at the end of March, I spoke to the team, and we just gradually got some things wrapped up, and then everybody went on furlough at the end of March, beginning of April, apart from me. And I had to suddenly start working from home instead of working from our head office in Newcastle, and that was a bit of a shock to the system, just IT issues and getting things set up and being able to run everything from home to start with. And then once you've got your head around that, it's sort of the loneliness of not having your team around you and not being able to work with people that you usually bounce off quite well. And if you have ideas about things, then you can go to your team to make them happen, or decide they're a terrible idea. And not having that was quite difficult too. But also we didn't know how long it was going to last. Back in March, it could have just been a month, or it could have been 2 months. And then gradually, as time's gone on, we, like many other businesses, have had to make that decision. do you invest and bring some staff back because you need to be doing some work to survive, or do you take full advantage of the furlough scheme and just try and wade out the storm? So we've tried to do a little bit of both. But I met with the team. We just met in Exhibition Park in Newcastle on one of the glorious days that we had back in April, and we all sat 2 meters apart, and I said to them, you know, how are you all getting on? And I was quite surprised that they were just missing work. They were missing the kind of the camaraderie, the getting together, the having a purpose and having something to do. So we ended up having weekly Teams calls just about each other and just what was happening. So not about work, but, you know, members of staff and what they're interested in. So I've tried to encourage them to do something if there was ever something on their bucket list that they wanted to do, like write a book, take a yoga course, plant more stuff in the allotment. They didn't take a lot of encouragement, that, you know, they wanted to do something, but getting together and talking about what they could do, because although that's not necessarily a job market skill, it's something that's going to keep their brains occupied and keep their well-being up. Because one of the things I was really worried about was their well-being, because I think everyone's had a bit of a tough time with being slightly more isolated than they would usually be and not having that sort of social interaction. And then I think if you take someone's job away from them, albeit temporarily, their purpose disappears, and that desire to work and build and strengthen themselves. So I've been keeping an eye on the charity sector and what kind of patterns are happening there. And it was interesting what you were saying about the growth in digital and technology. That's been huge for, I think, everyone, but in the charity sector I'm bombarded with this training course and that training course to improve your digital skills. And one of my colleagues, even though she's on furlough, the great thing about being able to do training on furlough is that I've been able to give some people some training to do. So I've been looking at the skill sets of all of my colleagues and seeing where we can maybe add some value while they're on furlough. So Jess at the moment is doing a digital summer school, and she's usually our overseas programs officer. So she collects information about the children and the communities that we're supporting that we can then use for marketing on our website and things like that. But she doesn't have any technical skills necessarily to do that job. So I had a conversation with her and said, it looks like this is what's going to happen with the job market. I don't want to lose you. I want to keep you. So I need to make sure that you're as skilled as you possibly can be in the right areas so I can keep the whole team together. And that's been really good. But then some of my colleagues,
in terms of the upskilling then, so
yeah,
obviously one of the things that you can do, as you said, is training time. And what about that? You mentioned before about the sort of the mental health and the well-being side of things. So I've been surprised as well. What I don't miss is the commute.
Yeah.
I've just been in traffic to get to this meeting. I've been in an in-person meeting and I've just fought against the traffic to get back here in time. So I don't miss that. I do miss the camaraderie. We are meeting once a week, once a fortnight at the moment, in person in a hotel or somewhere where we can meet. But what we don't do is just meet and do the work together that we would have done at home. It's more about planning and strategy and getting almost like just the community part of what we do. How have you found that? Are you going to, you know, even if potentially people continue on furlough for 2 more months, would you are you going to change the way you work, or are you going to do things different?
Yeah, well, we've had to make a really big decision with regard to our head office in Newcastle. So I approached our landlords 2 months ago and said, I don't think we're going to be able to afford to keep the office, or if we do, our programs that we deliver overseas are going to suffer. So kind of the end product of the business is going to suffer if we have to continue to pay rent on an office that we're not able to use. And actually they were really understanding. So we're going to be leaving our office on the 30th of September. And I had to meet with the team and talk to them about what the new working at CoCo would look like. So is everyone comfortable working from home, and looking at the pros and cons, like you're not going to have a commute anymore, you're not going to have to pay parking charges in the centre of town, all that sort of stuff. But the biggest thing that they were worried about was meeting together as a team to be able to brainstorm and have conversations about strategy and what we were doing. So I've reached out to people that we get supplied to. So like Slaley Hall, we could go up there and have a meeting there for the day, or we could go to Valham Farm where our IT company's based. If we went up there just last week, and they've got teepees in a field in Valham Farm just off the A69. And although it's a bit of a trek from town, when you're not doing a daily commute, if I ask the guys to meet at like 10:30 on a morning in Hexham and we all have a bit of lunch together and have a conversation, they're willing to do that because it brings us all together. So I think we're not 100% sure what the new way of working is going to look like, but it's going to be something like that. And we're just really grateful that we've got support from a lot of businesses within Newcastle. So I'm a fairly recent, in the past 4 years, graduate of the business school. So I spoke to them and they've said that we can use their meeting rooms if we need to get together and have workshops and, you know, sessions to talk strategy. And Board Hadaway, who are our one of their partners is on our board, Catherine, they've always given us meeting rooms so that we can have board meetings and things like that. And there's so much space now that we can do that in a safe way, compliant with all COVID rules and regulations. So we're really lucky to have the support of the business sector, and I think that's probably something that's going to happen more and more with charities as time goes on.
Yeah. So in terms of, you know, that's great to hear. I suppose everyone, you know, people are having to adapt quickly. Lots of things around, you know, we know people around, you know, if you're in long leases that don't work. And I don't know about, you know, co-working spaces, how they come back, because we can't get into one at the moment. We've tried to get into co-working spaces and that doesn't work. So we're actually having to meet in hotels and bars or anywhere.
Yeah.
But I think it's about changing the nature of that. We're trying to spend more quality time together rather than just time.
Yeah.
Because I think people are, when imagine when we're in the office, we're sitting there just working on a computer usually. So there's and the guys, especially the software developers, are just sitting there coding and not really talking because you've got your headphones in. So, but I do think we're herd animals. We want to be around people, even if we're not talking. You know, we still want to be around, have something around, and be able to go for a little walk. And but yeah, what do you? So in terms of your future, you probably see not having an office, or do you think you might go back to an office in the future?
I'm not sure. I think we'll have to see how this works, because a lot of even meeting sort of in different venues is quite difficult at the moment as well because of COVID restrictions. So maybe as those are lifted, we might be able to find more places that we can. We have looked at co-working spaces, and a couple have been mentioned to me, but again, they're not open yet. So that's not something that we can do at the moment. And obviously we're trying to save every bit of money that we can at the moment. And even co-working spaces come with a sort of monthly fee. So if we can channel that into the work that we're trying to do overseas, that would be my preference at the moment. But I think the biggest thing is going to be making sure that the team can come together. But going forward, one of our biggest challenges is I don't look at my team and see anyone that I can easily make redundant. There's only 5 of us, so there's not a big team, but nobody's really redundant. We kind of need everybody's skills, but we probably don't need them full time at the moment. So I think, and I know that on furlough, people are allowed to go and look for part-time jobs. And I have said to my team, if that's something that you want to do to secure your future, then I'll help you, I'll support you to do that, because I don't want to lose you. And I'm hoping that it's not forever, but some of them I've told them to spend a bit of time looking at what skill sets they have and looking what's out there in the job market. And there are actually some charities that are doing quite well. And I think the ones that are doing well are the ones that are very local. So if COVID's done anything, it's made a lot of people sort of think about the people on their doorstep, their neighbours, their local community. So places like hospices, and I'm a trustee for a charity called Children North East as well. And they've done really well. They've done an appeal that's been really successful. They've had funding from the People's Postcode Lottery, which they always get, but that's been secured, and that's a really positive outcome. But for charities like CoCo, whose work is primarily international, there's very little support. So I think those two sides of the sector will see very different things happening, but that might be good for jobs, because my administrator could be an administrator at any charity, and you know, my operations manager could be an operations manager at any charity too. So I have seen on the charity jobs market that there are more and more part-time positions becoming available, and I think it's because people are growing with caution. So, you know, they can see that there's an area that they need some expertise and some skills in, but maybe they don't want to go for a fully fledged full-time position first, and see how it goes. So that might help fill some of the gaps to start with.
Okay, you mentioned then about what you're saying about other charities. Do you just want to talk about that from a, like, you know, what you're hearing from people and skills as well? What are people looking
Yeah.
for, different skills, offering different types of contracts?
Yeah, well, we're seeing quite a lot. The charity sector's always been that there's some statistics somewhere that shows that there's a lot of women. I think there's a lot of women that work in the charity sector, and a lot of the time there'll be job shares and part-time jobs available because of that. And I think for a long time now, the charity sector as a whole has tried to encourage remote working. So especially talking to the Institute of Fundraising in the Northeast, we've been talking quite a lot about hiring people who live in London because they've maybe got great skill sets, but just because they can't be in an office in Newcastle doesn't mean that they can't do their job. So I think that had already started happening in the sector, and now we've kind of been really pushed into it. So I think that's definitely a change, that not so many jobs have a location on them. So you could like, for me personally, I'm hoping that I can stay at CoCo for as long as possible, but I am having a look to see if there's any consulting opportunities out there to add to that. And I've spoken to my chairman about that and said, if I could get a bit of consultancy work, maybe I could take a few less hours at CoCo while things are quieter. And then and there's consultancy positions coming up all over the place, and they're for charities maybe in London or Wales, but it doesn't matter where you're from, you can do it from home, and people are starting to realize that. So part-time and remote working, I think, is definitely increasing. And as far as skill sets are concerned, there's just a huge need for people with digital skills across the sector, because more and more fundraising is having to be done outside of events. So we can't have an event with 200 people like the CoCo Ball in November. We'd normally make 30 grand from that, and we can't do that this year. So we, like a lot of other charities, are trying to do online fundraising events, virtual events. So for people to do that, they've got to have certain amounts of knowledge about digital technology, different softwares, and there's so much out there, it can kind of be a little bit daunting. So there's definitely a big push on digital.
In terms of the specifics then, yeah, in terms of the specifics then, so you mentioned about, you know, events, software. Is it around the what sort of digital skill? If you had to describe the skill sets that you're looking for, that is this something that you're seeing not just in your charity but across the board in charities more
Yeah,
broadly? So things like social media, digital
yeah,
marketing,
definitely.
anything
Or
more, any more data analysis sort of
um, not so much data analysis, but I think people, that there is an element of that included in the social media skills that people are looking for. So if they're looking for someone to come in and improve their social media, it's usually because they're trying to fundraise through things like Instagram, Facebook, those kinds of things, and to have the knowledge of sort of how to understand the analytics behind that is really essential. So because you don't want something, and often it'll just be, you'll have one position available, so that person will come in and create the content, put it on the digital marketing platform, whatever it might be. And also you might have to use a certain kind of platform through which to do all of your social media. So we're using Hootsuite at the moment, and it's not really complicated, but you do need to spend some time learning how to use these things and updating websites as well, because we're frequently having to refer people to websites because we can't have face-to-face meetings with them. So I think that bit's really important, but you might have to get someone who maybe their skill set was producing great content in the past, and now you need to look at how they can produce that content, publish that content, read the analytics from that content, and then work out whether or not they should put the same kind of content out again, or if it needs adapting. So it's kind of an all-rounder on all things digital, from websites to blogs to all sorts of social media.
Yeah. And what about in terms of what we've seen in other sectors around particularly digital skills, is obviously we call it skills for work. So it's about using software packages effectively, and then it's pushing more into, we've seen a lot of demand around social media marketing, digital analysis skills. So we ran a course previously that was around, but we had charities coming to that, and they wanted to know who's providing, what does a customer look like, what do they. Oh, sorry, my daughter's just come into the room now as well. Well, thank you, darling. She's just giving me a present. Thank you very much. I'll have to come soon. So, but what they were looking for, they're trying to, how do I understand my customers more, and how do we identify new customers, and how do we identify what's the biggest impact from the events and things? How do we maximize the profitability of them? How do we maximize the revenue that we can generate? So it's things around that as well. In terms of the broader charity sector, what sort of skill sets around, we've seen this around things like running the business skills, finding mentors, it's finding obviously people on the revenue side, and events, because events are being hit hugely at the moment. What do you think, what are other people looking for as well, and what are you hearing from the charity sectors and other people in there?
From the point of view of the charities themselves, or the people supporting them, or? In
terms of the charities themselves, like, what are they looking for? What skills do they need? What challenges do they have around people?
Yeah, I think that they're looking for, I think people have always been looking in the charity sector for someone that can relate to the cause. And I hate the word passionate, but and I always wish there was a different word for it. But you don't want someone who's sort of all crazy raving about the cause, but people who really do connect with what it is the charity is trying to do. Because I think at the moment the charities that are doing well are the ones that come across as really authentic, and their message is really simple, and your donation can make this difference and this can happen. So you need, a lot of my friends who work in the private sector sometimes say that they want to take a leap into the charity sector because it'll feel better, they'll be doing their bit, and sometimes I think they get to, I just turned 40, and a lot of my friends are having that kind of decision that they're like, am I doing the right thing with my life? Should I be giving something back? And I do think that some of my friends and colleagues that work in the private sector in sales and marketing, for example, would be really great in the charity sector. But what I've said to them is, you can definitely transfer those skills across, but you've got to really resonate with what it is the charity is doing. But I think that's the same even if you're working in the private sector. Anyone can get a job to just do a job and go in every day and hate it and get paid, and that's okay. But for me, I've always wanted to do a job that I love, and believe you me, I have had days at CoCo where I've just been like pulling my hair out, especially lately, because it hasn't been all fun and games. I've been having to do the admin, I've been having to do like technical problems, IT issues, everything, but it's been really good for building up my skill set as well. And I think that it's a good opportunity right now for people to have a think, but I do understand that there's that kind of, I've got a job, I should be really grateful that I'm in a position where I have a job that's paying me money, and I don't want to go and do something different in case it doesn't work out when the job market's so fragile. But I think a sort of people understanding and appreciating the culture and the message and what the organization they're doing is trying to do is really important, because that's the difference between a great marketeer and a great fundraiser and a kind of average one. So I think that's really important. So it'll be at interview stage when people will really get that across. But I think there are charities that are recruiting at the moment. I get emails to my inbox all the time about jobs in international development and jobs in the charity sector as a whole. Mm-hmm. And there are you can see where the charities that have got funding are, and they've got sort of big funding for like five years, so they know that they can employ someone to do something for that period of time, so they'd be pretty safe. But I think when it comes to the crunch, people want people who are emotionally intelligent and who understand the cause and who really want to be there and have a strong work ethic as well. I do wonder sometimes if the whole furlough scheme is going to cause issues with people returning to work, and I think it'll be different, and it hopefully won't go back to that whole like alarm clock crazy busy, not keeping any time for yourself, absolutely burnt out and exhausted. And then, but hopefully it won't go completely the other side where people are like, oh, gone are the days of where I used to get paid to sit at home and not do anything. Because I think there's two kinds of people. There's people who really need and want to work, to have a purpose, and there's some who just think, well, this is great, I'll just sit back, relax. And I heard someone on Jeremy Vine the other day say that the reason there'd been such an increase in alcoholism throughout lockdown was because every night was like a Friday night. And I thought, well, it's not for those of us that are still working. Like, I haven't, and I'm really glad that I haven't been in that category of people. But I think for people that genuinely haven't had any reason to get up and go to work and do what it is they're good at, I think it'll be really hard to come back from.
I think you're right. Yeah. So I think if what we're looking at, we're talking about maybe another 3 million people could be made redundant. So there's a lot of people in that category. So I think it's about, obviously we work with cities and planning and policy around getting ready for that support, because obviously that it causes, like you say, there is a close link between your health, your wealth, your purpose, your mental health, alcoholism, other issues that creep in there. So in terms of the future for CoCo, you're not trying to pivot. Are you still doing what you did now, but we're going to have to, let's assume we go on for another 6 months in this sort of up and down pandemic, no vaccine. At what point do you need to think about changing, pivoting? Are you already thinking about what?
Yeah, well, we're obviously, we've made our decision about our office. That's made a big saving, which is good. We don't have as many outgoings, so that'll be useful. And then the next biggest outgoing with most organizations is staff. So I think that's going to be the next difficult phase is, but we're trying to do more fundraising alongside that. So instead of having the ball this year, we've launched an appeal to try and get support from donors, and we just did that on Monday. And but that's taken a lot of new digital skills and, you know, putting our appeal out across social media, but it'll also take a lot of kind of, I've got 2 members of staff that have come back 2 days a week, so it's not very much. So I'll wait until Matt and Rosie are back in, and we'll look at the analytics from that and see if we're doing the right thing. So I think the future for us will be doing a lot more digital and online fundraising and virtual events as well, and looking really carefully at them to see if they're being successful, analysing them and then trying to improve them. But we are kind of hoping that by sort of March, April time next year, we might be able to start putting events on again. And if we can't do that, I think it is going to be very difficult for us, because the sector as a whole, I think, has been very overly reliant on government funding, public sector funding, and not so much CoCo. We've never had any government support. We're not really that kind of charity. We don't really tick the boxes, but that's why we've had to do events, like even if it's a running event, or, you know, like we had loads of people running in the Great North Run, which has been cancelled, and that's going to really affect quite a lot of charities too. But I think if you've been really reliant upon government funding, those are the charities that are really going to suffer if they haven't diversified their income at all. And they're going to need to think of a new way of working. And I think they're probably going to look to the private sector, but then even the private sector has been hit really badly. So there's not necessarily opportunities there either. But it's kind of working out who's done well, who's still okay despite the pandemic, and sort of looking at your graph, kind of seeing which industries are doing well at the moment is quite interesting, but it's just not the same for everyone across the board. So
it's not, no, but I think well, what we will definitely do is share with you the who's doing well, the companies who are still hiring, because I think that's going to be your target list, hopefully, of people to approach. So
yeah,
I think we've got general sector levels, and we can give you that information on a regional basis. So if you want to know who's doing well in the Northwest, who's doing well in Leeds, Manchester, Sheffield, wherever you need to reach to, we'll happily do that for you. So because I think that's where it's around where's the opportunity and who's not doing so well. And for those people who are not doing so well, we're trying to help them to, particularly government departments and combined authorities, to help them to put the support mechanisms in place to help people transfer skills. So
Yeah.
we have, if you take an example of the education, so education are offering lots of decent paid jobs for part-time work for
Yeah.
people who can work. It's basically people who can work with people. So it's
Mm.
about, we've called it educating and caring for all. So um, it's not so much about just social care, it's about behaviour support, academic support. A lot of people are going to be left behind or have lost a lot of education and will
Mm.
need learning support assistance. So if you have staff who need part-time opportunities, I would definitely push them
Yeah.
down that route as a one that can work flexibly around the sector. We're seeing, for example, the arts and entertainment sector. How can we help them get into education, take those transferable skills
Mm.
around creativity and arts and communication, and not necessarily change career, but it's a way maybe to enhance their existing career and maybe take on that as a two. I think more and more people in the future maybe will have multiple careers, seasonal careers maybe, you know, so where the seasons are up and down in an area, that might be something that we encourage people to do, have multiple, you know, it's not for everybody, but I think it's maybe the reality of the job market out there.
Yeah.
Having that multi-skilled, because we all want, particularly in smaller companies, we want multi-skilled people. I
Yeah, of
don't
course.
want a very niche skill set that we can't. We have to have somebody who can, you know, make the tea, do the website, and do a bit of coding and do a bit of social media as well. You know, so that's what we're asking people to do. So that multi-skilling, and particularly in smaller companies, is really important.
Yeah.
So in terms of we've just got 5 minutes left, and I'll do the wrap up, Lucy, if that's okay. So do you want to just tell me? I know we talked a little bit about CoCo. Just tell me again a bit more about, you know, what your plans are. Tell me more about the work. If you can try, I'm not asking you to summarize 20 years,
Yeah.
but just tell us, give people a flavour if you know what CoCo can do for them, what that they can do for you. You know, I'm not saying this is an appeal webinar.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the more people who know about you, the more people
Mm.
know about you, the great work that you guys do, the better, really. So
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, we were founded by Steve Cram, who's an ex-Olympic athlete. So a lot of people who've supported us in the past have been runners. So we've got a database full of people who've ran ultra marathons, 5Ks, all sorts of things. I just did a 10K last week. It nearly killed me. But I know it's crazy the things you do for the job you love. So a lot of the people that support us are supporting us by challenging themselves. So quite a few people that would normally be on our database as people that would come to the ball and buy a table and spend a bit of money on the night have actually been sitting at home, fed up, need something to do. We're doing a challenge to walk along Hadrian's Wall in September, and we've got a couple of businesses that have brought their colleagues along to kind of get them out into the beautiful Northumbrian countryside and get them doing something a bit different. And that's great for us because we raise a bit of money for the charity, we meet some new businesses, and we meet them outside of the boardroom, so it's a bit more interesting and get to know them. So I'm going on that walk as well, and I'm dragging a couple of the staff along, and it'll be a really good way. It's like networking in the new normal, whatever that is, and also raising a bit of money at the same time. And then getting where I'm speaking to a few different businesses who have done okay to see if they can support us going forward, because I honestly think if we can get through to sort of springtime next year, we'll be absolutely fine. So sort of forecasting for that is nerve-wracking and exciting at the same time, and we're just making sure that we're trying a little bit of everything. And the biggest thing for us is to make sure that our support to our programs in East Africa is maintained, because kids have had as much disruption there as they have had here. You know, some of them, Tanzanian kids have gone back to school, Kenyan kids don't go back until January. So we're looking at how we can work with the schools to open them up to communities to come in as safe a way as possible, to kind of do some community learning and not official education. But schools still need to be looked after, renovated, teachers still need to be paid, and students still need to learn. So we're just trying to work as closely as possible with them to make sure that we can do everything we can to make sure they don't fall too far behind.
so that's interesting. Obviously, this is a global pandemic. So how has it affected your sort of end users, if you like, of the charity?
It's been quite different in East Africa, and I think that's primarily because the countries are huge. So Tanzania and Kenya are absolutely enormous, and there's a lot of people who live in rural areas, and that's where we concentrate most of our work. So where they've seen high COVID incidences have been in capital cities, which is not an area that we work in. And then when someone from the capital city might have travelled to some of the towns that we're working in, there's been one or two cases that have been stopped really quickly. So children aren't suffering from COVID, as it were. A couple of them have lost their parents. If their parents are working in Dar es Salaam, for example, we've had a young guy and a young boy and a young girl who've both lost their parents, and we've subsidized their education and brought them back from Dar es Salaam, because once a parent dies, they don't have anyone to take care of them. And there was a little boy who got in touch with us really early on, sort of April time, and he'd just lost his father, and his mum had nothing, no job, no income whatsoever. So her and her son were going out every day onto the streets of Dar es Salaam and trying to sell bottled water on the really busy motorways. And he was one of the students that was supposed to be at one of the schools that we've established. And I got a call from Oswin, who handles all of our programs in East Africa, and he said, Lucy, if we don't bring this boy back to Songea and put him back into school now, then I don't think we'll get him back, because he'll be lost to the informal economy in Dar es Salaam, and we'll never be able to rescue his education. So we brought him back, and one of the schools that would normally have 170 students in had 16 through COVID, and they were the most vulnerable kids who didn't have parents or didn't have enough of a safe place to be. And the teachers volunteered to come in and like live in the school. We have dormitories at quite a few of them because they're so far away for kids to travel, and we separated kids off in the dorms, so they've been at school throughout, but just 16 of them in a space that would have normally been 170. So they've to be able to support them and protect them is the most important thing to us. And as long as we can continue to do that, then we're doing what we set out to do.
Yeah, great. Well, anything we can do to help, we definitely will. I think there's lots of companies in engineering, IT, health and social care have probably ridden out the storm, if you like, through this, and some of them have done well, particularly tech companies.
Yeah.
As well. So definitely, if there's anything we can do there, that will definitely help. So definitely more challenge. What's the next challenge? So what can people get involved in next? What's coming up?
We still have a few spaces for Walk the Wall on the 19th of September, if anyone wants to come along and walk Hadrian's Wall with us. And then we've got a running club, and we're constantly putting stuff on Facebook. There's a few people doing the virtual Great North Run, if anyone fancies a half marathon.
Okay. So how's that going to operate then this year? When does that happen?
People they can go out and do it whenever they like, but the official date of the Great North Run, I think it was, I've closed my calendar so it didn't ping while we're having a conversation, but it's like the end of September on a Sunday. I think it might be like the 16th or something. So people all over the Northeast will probably be running on that day and running around wherever, so they don't have to do the horrible hill up to the end of South Shields, because I've done it once before and I'd never do it again. But we've got quite a few people. We started something at CoCo called we were doing like the 5K at the beginning, so getting people ready to do, like, start off doing a 5K and then end up being able to run a half marathon by the time they got to September. And some of them have been training so hard that they're determined that they're going to do it come hell or high water. So they just do it virtually, record it on Strava, set up a fundraising page. Facebook is actually really good for fundraising because they don't charge any fees. You can just set it up on your page, and then they go off for a run, and then the fundraising comes through to us, which is great. And then that person hasn't lost all of that effort that they've put into training. Whereas I had a place and I was really pleased that I didn't get it, but then felt so guilty that I should that I did a 10K instead. But yeah, there's lots of virtual running events going on, and we're looking at doing a virtual wine tasting and a quiz later on in the year. We've got a few like sort of ex-athletic stars that we're going to try to get together for a quiz.
So we can have a Zoom call with an ex-star.
Yeah, exactly. We're trying to do something for everyone, because my mum constantly says, I don't like running, and I'm like, I know. She'll come to the ball.
Do the wine tasting.
Yeah, wine tasting. Then
do the wine. I did see there was a zoo somewhere which obviously was struggling as well because lack of people coming, you could hire a llama to come onto your Zoom call for an hour.
No.
Yeah. So if you want to maybe think about that, maybe work with the local zoo and
Something different.
get a celebrity athlete plus a llama on the call. That'd be great.
I wonder which would be more popular. Maybe we
And
could
then
find.
I was thinking the other thing I did see the other day, there was an Off Wiedersehen pet was advertised on the telly for some reason. I've got no idea. And they were talking about, one of the guys was saying about, said that obviously there's no work in the northeast at the moment, but I've heard there's a job going to rebuild Hadrian's Wall. So it might be a good construction project there.
Wow, can you imagine?
But it could, hey, it can keep, let's walk it first, not rebuild it. But
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, it'd be great to see if anybody can get involved in your challenges. They can find you on Facebook and get involved. Yeah, just the comfort of their own home or in their local park.
Yeah, absolutely. Great, thanks,
Brilliant.
Dom.
Well, thanks a lot, Lucy. Appreciate that. Appreciate your time today as well. So, if in terms of your website, where do people go?
It's just www.coco.org.uk.
And then just find you on Facebook. Search for
Yeah,
CoCo.
you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm Lucy Kendall. I'm quite easy to find, but there's some links from the website as well. So
okay, and then just for people for next week, we've got a session on a week today with Jersey Government. We're talking about the digital skills work that we've done with them. They're going to be talking about that project, and then the week after we've got a focus in on the built environment. I think it is. We're going to talk about the construction sector as well. So please hopefully join us for those. But Lucy, thanks again for joining.
thank you.
Have
Thanks
a
for having me.
wonderful weekend and
You too.
a long weekend.
Yes.
And I'll see you soon, hopefully in person. All right.
Thanks, Dom. Lovely to see you. Bye
Take
for
care.
now.
Thank you
Bye.
very much. Bye, everyone. Bye, bye.